Good morning and welcome to BlackUSA.News. This is the Donnie Glover Show. I'll be your host. I want to thank you for your support of BlackUSA.News. We bring you programming 7 days a week. We have the 9 o'clock show. We also have 10 o'clock, William Honolulu with the morning show. Each evening at 7 p.m., we have different broadcasts and we have programming on Saturdays and Sundays. If you would like a show, then just drop us an email at editor@blackusa.news. This is the last day, can you believe it, of February in 2022. So we have 1 day left to, or at least in Black History Month, to discuss some Black history, and I want to take an opportunity to plug these publications. I Am Black Wall Street, and also Unapologetically Black. This one is the autobiography. This is my second book. This one came out in Freddie Gray's year, 2015, and this was 2021. I guess it's time to get to work on a third book. Do you have any books? Did you write a book? Are you interested in writing a book? It's not as difficult as one might think. And whatever I can do to help any future authors out there, I certainly will. You can drop an email to that very same address, editor@blackusa.news. So if there is one thing that I would share, particularly with young people, about Black History Month, one thing that is important to me, one thing I would have them take away from this 28-day month, it would be that Black history, despite all of what America attempts to tell us about us, Black history did not start nor end with slavery. America has a very short memory. America has selective amnesia. America remembers what it wants to remember. And that's why it's imperative for us to have our own books now, whether it's my book, W.B. Du Bois's, Marcus Garvey's, countless other Black writers. I mean, we wouldn't even know where to start in terms of books. But there are many, many people of color, Black people, who have written books about our history that we should know about. And if we're counting on the school system or some other institution to teach us about our history, then we're already in trouble. And it's real simple. You go to the library, go to the Black History section, whether it's Pratt, Central, Penn North, wherever. You start opening books, you start reading, and then you start conversing with others who are researching Black history. But if there's one thing I would have people take away from this month, something to share with every person, whatever their color, here in America, it's that Black history did not start nor end with slavery. Who is your favorite person in Black history? We'd love to see your comments. Who do you look up to? And let me just say, here's another important point. Good morning, Mike. Hello to Tampa. It's a little fire going on, and we hear Mr. Pharaoh responding. Come on, Pharaoh. I kind of lost my point there. So didn't start and end with slavery. So who is your favorite Black history person? Who is important to you? And let me say this. Start with your own family. You know, we go looking all around. Man, find out who your grandma, your great-grandmother, your great-grandfather, your great-great-grandfather. Find out who these people are, because more than likely, good morning, Paul Stanley Jr. Good morning. More than likely, you have greatness up your own tree. You know, we're so used to allowing other people to tell us who we are and define us. We have to stop that. We have to know our own history for one, so that no one can tell us anything about our history. I don't care if it's ancestry.com or whomever. None of these things are exact sciences. And the oral tradition, the oral information that your grandma and grandpa gave you, well, hey, they're just as good as anyone else on the planet. I hear you, Michael Haney. He's bragging about his famous sister, Dr. Sharon Haney, biochemist. And Mike, this does not even do your sister justice. I implore you to come on here, Mike. And I've been asking you for a minute to talk about Sharon, and I think it's high time you do that. So we'll be awaiting your arrival here, Mr. Haney, for this Monday morning special assignment. My dad was a chemist. He majored in chemistry, science, was a science teacher in Baltimore City Public Schools. This is long before he became a funeral director and embalmer. But certainly look up your own family tree. I wanted to make a point. I mentioned Ancestry.com, some of these other outlets. They want to control. They want to tell a story. They essentially look at your DNA and start matching it with other groups of the same DNA found in other parts of the world. Your grandmother told you, in many instances, about one of your relatives who was Indian. We don't talk about this much. I remember Skip Gates said that only 2 to 3% of Black people had Native American blood. Now, did he talk to 2 to 3% of Black people? Because it's what, 40 million Black people? Did he talk to that many people? Because I've met a lot of Black people, West Coast and East Coast, that refer to some type of indigenous ancestry. Did you know that there were Black people here in America when Columbus got here? Did you know that? They will tell you. I was at an event Saturday down at Arena Players, really nice Black History Month program. And they had a book down there. I think Haki Ami had it, called 1619. There's this thing out about the 1619 Project, as if Black people first came to the Americas enslaved in 1619. That's why you got to get this book. 98 pages, not a long read. We were here before 1619, and I'm talking about the transatlantic slave trade. This book notes at least 1525. Right there off the coast of South Carolina. It is believed that a Spaniard brought some Blacks here to enslave them. 1525. This is damn near 100 years before the 1619 Project. Blacks were already here. They escaped. Guy tried to enslave them. Spaniard. They escaped, beat them up. And then they moved over into the Gullah Islands. That's the story. So as much as there's written history, there's also the oral tradition. And I encourage you to tap into grandma's mind, grandpop's mind, look in their Bibles, and capture your own history. We got our good friend Art Doug Blackshear on. Let me just say this. Speaking of Indians, out there in California where Doug is, have you ever heard of the indigenous peoples out of California? First of all, did you know that California was named after a Black goddess? Did you know? Did you know? Did you know? California was named after Califia, a Black goddess. And if you're up to speed on your Arabic, you'll say Califia. Well, what's the root word in that? Caliph. Well, that's an Arabic word. You know, Caliph, Caliphate. Those were like Arab leaders, captains, generals, Caliphate, you know, rulers. So then you get to thinking, well, wow, California, Caliphate, that's the Islamic angle. You're over there on the West Coast. Well, hold up. Where did this information come from? Whoever told us about that? So here's the point. If you've ever been in New Orleans, and you're really going to appreciate this, everything we know in this country quite often is in English. We speak English, we write English. How did that happen? Because of the British and their presence in America. But if you've ever been in New Orleans, I love New Orleans, love the gumbo, etouffee, the po' boy. If you go to New Orleans, Louisiana, you'll realize that in addition to the British being in the United States, there was also the Spanish and the French. As a matter of fact, the Spanish were here before the British. Because remember, Columbus sailed across the seas, 1492. He got money from Portugal and from Spain. Came across the waters. Florida is probably the first place that anybody touched coming this far north and this relatively, I won't say unexplored, because it wasn't unexplored. It was new to those people traveling, the Europeans, but the African had already been sailing here. Yes, the African had ships. Yes, the African had the first ships. The first ships. Well, duh, it's only the oldest peoples on the planet. The absurdity of Western writers to think or to portray a picture as if Africans were just wearing loincloths and playing drums is just absolutely ludicrous. Know your history. Know about the Great Pyramids. If the Africans built Great Pyramids in the Sudan and then Egypt, surely they could build this ship. Let me go over here to Spain and Portugal, 1492. And this might be the most important thing I want to share with you. Have you ever wondered what was going on in Europe prior to 1492, Columbus, Portugal, Spain, slave trade? I'm going to tell you what was going on there in Europe. The Moors have been dominating from the Iberian Peninsula throughout Europe. They have been dominating for 800 years. The Moors, Moors. And I look back over my life, I find the word Moor everywhere. In my middle name, Donald Morton Glover, went to Morehouse, lived on Moreland Avenue. Never really put all this together. The Moors. If you go out to Druid Hill Park and you go around the reservoir, on the eastern end of the reservoir is a tall column, like a lookout column, and it's Moorish. Some will say Spanish, but if the Moors gave you your culture, then certainly the Spanish are Moorish. After the last Moors got chased out of Spain and Portugal, and this is exactly around the time of Ferdinand and Isabella, as they pushed the last Moors out, Ferdinand and Isabella then moved into the Alhambra. Now, the Alhambra is this big old palace over there in Spain, built by the Moors. The Moors also gave Europe some of its first universities. The Moors taught many of the Europeans about hygiene, irrigation. But you'll never learn these things in American history books. Why? Because American history books are only going to tell you from a non-black, because you can't say that word black without people catching some feelings, a non-black perspective. And that's why it is important that we write our own books and we tell our own stories, record our own history, research our own ancestors. You know, the Europeans went over there into Egypt and started digging up mummies, digging up kings. How would people like it if we went to England and started digging up their ancestors? Do you see how crass that is? Do you see how cruddy, how gutter, how ghetto that is? You're digging up people's ancestors. Shameful. Only to take the gold and put it in your basements, in your museums, in your coffers. Let's share some of today's comments. On this date in 1887, Granville Woods of Cincinnati, a black inventor, patented the telephone. Go ahead, Granville Woods. Speaking of the 1800s, here's another point, and it's rarely ever made. Not all black people were slaves. Not all black people were enslaved. Not all black people have a history or legacy of slavery in their family. In America, not all blacks were slaves. Here's another fact. There were white people who were indentured servant, whatever. If you don't have control over your life, a slave is a slave. It's not talked about. It's not talked about the criminals who were put out of Europe, put on a ship and sent away. And where did they come? They came to the United States. And where are they today? Where are their descendants today? Well, that's a great question. As a matter of fact, one could presume that a lot of the Africans who were brought here to America were not skilled. Well, that's quite to the contrary. The Africans who were brought here were some of the most skilled ever. Many were kings, queens, princes, and princesses. Sarah Forbes Bonetta, one of the most beautiful pictures I've ever seen of a black woman is Sarah Forbes. Oh my God, just the most beautiful chocolate skinned woman you've ever seen. She was an Igbo princess, if I'm not mistaken. And she was ultimately adopted by the Queen of England. I want to say Victoria, I'm not sure. But she was adopted by the Queen of England, Sarah Forbes Bonetta. Beautiful black woman. So it's important that we learn our history. It's important that we dig deep, and you name the industry. Hi, Catherine Marie. Great to see you this morning. Whether it's banking, if you're looking at banking, certainly you got to know about Joe Haskins, especially here in the city of Baltimore, or some of the other bankers, or women, especially when I go down to Richmond. Sisters, you got to know about Maggie Walker, Maggie Lena Walker. Every black woman in America, every woman in America should know about Maggie Walker. Why? Well, I'll tell you why. Number one, in addition to Tulsa's Black Wall Street, I told you there were two other official ones, one in Durham and one in Richmond. Maggie was in Richmond, Jackson Ward. And she was the first woman to found a bank in America. Did you know that? Did you know that? Did they teach you that in school? No, because a lot of times the teachers didn't know. And let me just say this. I went back and shared some of this Black Wall Street information with my elementary school teacher. And he knew nothing about it. And what came to me is that more and more of our history is being uncovered all the time. And while I was excited to share the history, it kind of threw me that he didn't know about it already. But so much of our history has been hidden from us. So it is imperative that you ask questions, that you research. If something looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and maybe it is a duck, even though America telling you it's a horse. So use your own brain. My daddy told me, your mama told you, use your head for something other than a hat rack. Think for yourself. Ask critical questions. Who, what, when, where, why? Who authored this? What was their motivation for writing this? One of the stories that's very controversial, that's very difficult to share in America, is that of Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood. Margaret Sanger said that black people are weeds that need to be exterminated. She went on to found Planned Parenthood. So pardon me, I don't have a lot of high regard for people that call my people weeds and want to exterminate my people. Just like the father of gynecology in America, J. Marion Sims. He ain't no father of gynecology in my mind, not when you experimented on black women, enslaved black women without anesthesia. What savage nature of beast is this? Certainly, this is not the same savage that wants to paint a picture like Fox 45 does every morning, like everything wrong with Baltimore is black people's fault, because they do. Then they bring up Freak Nasty, the guy that ran for mayor and state's attorney, and he's going to be the moral compass of Baltimore. Anyway, I digress. Mike shared some information about his sister. Mike, you think I'm going to read this whole thing? I asked you to come on here. I'm not reading it all. Biochemist Sharon Haney graduated from what school in Baltimore City? Rollins University of Pennsylvania, undergraduate degree, biochemistry. Mike, you could have just come on and said all of that. Anyway, there's more to Black history than just Martin Luther King. We were here long before 1619. They got that all wrong. As a matter of fact, out there, and I don't know if you've ever been to Vegas, but who's been to Vegas? Put your hands up if you've been to Las Vegas. If you've been to Las Vegas, there's a hotel out there called the Luxor. I love the Luxor. Oh my God, I had the most wonderful time many, many moons ago. I asked myself, how in the world did Las Vegas get an Egyptian-themed hotel in the middle of the desert? Well, it probably has to do with the discovery made in Kincaid's cave of Egyptian artifacts. And this is the kind of stuff that the Smithsonian and other of these American institutions tend to hide. Look it up. Don't take my word for it. Don't take my word on none of it. Don't take my word on anything in here. And this one has references for you. So check it out. Don't take anybody's word. Go and research for yourself. In my research, I found that some explorers were out there in Kincaid's cave. They found some Egyptian artifacts, but it's not uncommon. I mean, you look at the Olmec heads. You ever seen the Olmec heads down in Mexico? You see those pleptoid lips? You see that those wide nose? You know that nose, that wide nose? That nose. African. But some people say, oh, that's not African. Yes, it is. We're denied all over the world. Why? Because we pretty? I guess so. Some people don't want you to know your history. Some people are, I don't know, not happy with their own history, so they got to trash your history. But tell you something else in Black History Month. I want you to know more than Martin Luther King, more than just about Dr. King. I want you to know more than the fact that slavery started, the transatlantic slave trade. I want you to know what was going on before 1492 in Europe. Why was Spain and Portugal so anxious to erase the Black presence there? Why did they want to whitewash it? Because of that Moor. That Moor. And at first the Moors were Muslim, then Moors was a term used for all Black people. But people are afraid of this beautiful blackness. They want to hide it. They want to point fingers at it. They want it, but they want to talk about it. I want our young Black boys and Black girls to feel beautiful and proud, whether they're as chocolate can get or as light as white chocolate can get. We want our people to know that you are beautiful. We want our children to know that they come from a glorious past, that our history did not begin nor end with slavery, that we have a direct relationship with Africa and the 54 or so nations there in Africa. And tell you something else, I want you to know about the continent of Africa. I want you to know about not just South Africa, but Botswana, Zimbabwe, Angola. I want you to know about West Africa, not just Nigeria, the most populated West African nation, 200 most populated African nation, 200 million people. We want you to know about Sierra Leone, where they sent British slaves back to. We want you to know about Liberia, where American slaves went back to. We want you to know about East Africa, about Ethiopia, the only African nation besides Liberia that was not colonized. It was occupied for 2 years by Mussolini, but it was never colonized. Ethiopia. And so when you see the direct correlation between Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, and the Jamaicans and the Rastafarianism, it's a beautiful thing. You connect the dots between Ethiopia, Jamaica, and then all the way to America. You know, Bob Marley talked about Buffalo Soldiers. Dreadlock Rasta. I talk about the Buffalo Soldiers in this book, how they got started, came out of Florida during the Seminole Wars. Chief John Horse led the black people from Florida all the way to Oklahoma in 1843. Got to Oklahoma, America got jiggy with them, wanted to play with their freedom, and then those people, Chief John Horse, black Indian, black Seminole, led those 200 black soldiers, not slaves, from Oklahoma to Mexico and set up shop in Mexico. Chief John Horse. Hey, Spike Lee, if you are watching this, you got to make a movie about Chief John Horse, the baddest black man I've ever heard of in America. That's enough for today. My name's Donnie Glover. Stay tuned for Mr. William Harner Blue at 10 o'clock. Evening program all through, starting at 6 p.m. this evening with Yolanda Pulley, Donna Tabron, and Jason Rodriguez. That's 6 o'clock. That's Frontline News. At 7 o'clock, we have Shared Spaces with lovely Quita Chansey and also my brother from another mother, Mr. Dave Lovelace. And then at 8 p.m., Robert Washington will bring us the Robert Report. Michael Haney, big ups to your sister. She went to Western. And John Henry Clark. Thank you there, Mr. Anthony Coates. Haven't seen you in a minute. We got to get you on, talk about these union and these politicos and all of the stuff black people are doing to mess up Baltimore, Mr. Anthony Coates. Good to see you. We're now broadcasting on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. My name's Donnie Glover, and you have a beautiful day. Good morning, world.